Everyone, welcome to a special episode of WoW where Dr. Gloria is going to discuss mold and how to test to make sure that it's not in your environment and what to do if you happen to find it. So, hey, Dr. Gloria, thanks for coming on today.
Hey, good morning, dear. Thanks for this special presentation. I think that you and I have discussed it, that our members are asking a lot of questions about mold. So this is very timely to be able to hopefully help guide them through some of those situations where they may not even know they have mold. You're a good example of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Cynthia actually is the one who really brought up the topic because somebody she
Right.
knows who's very sick works in a moldy environment and
Wow.
hasn't changed that. And so she's very sensitive to this discussion.
Well, and we all should be, but you're right. Cynthia brought it up for us to do something, and I brought it up to you about doing mold testing, and I think that I mean, you and I are always good guinea pigs, so that we can show our members, and you were gracious enough to do that. So let's talk a little bit about mold and the varied symptoms that occur and places that mold accumulates without a lot of times people thinking about it before we go into how to test for it yourself and all of that. Okay, and you've got the test kit, I believe, and pictures of what you found in your house, right?
Right.
Okay, good. That'll be great to share. So let's go ahead. Where do you want to start, dear heart?
I actually want to start with the testing, if you don't mind,
Okay.
only because I feel like it's important for many people to test. I have no indications of mold in my house anywhere. My house
Okay.
is everything, there's no mold showing. So,
Right.
but the fact that we've had so much rain in the last couple years, and I just was curious when the conversation came up. So I think it's
Right.
really important for people to consider just looking and seeing, especially if you're ill.
Well, you're so right, Tracy. And the other thing too is that your point to a lot more rain in certain areas. But for me, being in Texas, for instance, and a lot of my patients are in the South. Okay, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. They have a lot of mold, and they're used to it. But still, the patients that I have there, they deny it. You know, it's kind of like, oh, I don't think my fibromyalgia or my chemical sensitivities or my chronic fatigue could be. I don't smell it, I don't see it. Usually, I have such a good smeller that usually I can tell the minute I walk into a room. Not everybody can. And you know as well as I do that when people become used to something, like if somebody has a bad smell coming from their sewer, I've come across that with patients. After a while, they don't smell it.
Mhm.
And, or a smoker doesn't smell his own smoke. Somebody comes in the room and they reek of it, their hair and their clothes and everything else. So let's back up a little bit and talk about you didn't smell anything. You didn't see any black mold in your shower or in the grouting, and of course you have solid stone countertops in your kitchen, so you wouldn't have seen it like in the grout spots like you do in some homes that have tile. But where were the areas you tested? Tell me, because Tracy ordered the test kit from Amazon because years ago you couldn't get it that way. When I had my clinics, yeah, hold it up real good so they can see it.
It This is the test kit. So
Okay,
it's
so
from
it's
Immunolytic,
good. And
and it
years
came with
ago,
five. It came with
with
five little petri dishes.
right,
And what I did was what you do is you put them into a room and you turn on your vents, like your air circulating system. And so this one I put in my kitchen and it's clear. Nothing showed
okay,
up. This I
okay,
put in my kids' bathroom. Nothing showed up.
okay.
And this one was the laundry room and I got one spot.
Yep, and that's a pretty big spot too. Yeah, I hadn't seen that.
Well,
Okay,
they've actually grown a little bit since
they will. It's
yeah,
fungus; it'll grow.
they grew after I like checked when you're supposed to check. This
Oh,
one was in our what I call the pool bathroom, and that has two
right.
spots. And this is the one that
Okay,
really bugged me because it's my master bathroom. 3 spots.
3 spots. Okay. So as I started to say, when I had my clinics, you couldn't do that. You couldn't buy them just over the counter to do a DIY. You had to call in remediation, which is very expensive. And thank God now they have the test kits. And the one you got is a good company. I know who they are. But there's several companies that do it. I suggest that you use that one if you can, because it's easy to get on Amazon. I don't know if they sell it directly, but the important thing is that in my experience with the Environmental Illness Society, we were told to always have the patients put it at counter height, like on your kitchen counter, on your kitchen, on your bathroom counter. Where did you put yours? Like in the
On the
laundry
counter.
room, on the counter. Did you put it on top of the washer or the dryer in the laundry room? Where did you put it there?
Just on the counter. We have
Just
a
on the.
pretty big laundry room, so there's
Okay,
lots
so just
of,
so it's still counter height then. Okay,
yeah.
good, good. So what happens is once you get that, there are some things that I'll tell you at the end here that are easy for you to try. But for instance, we know that bleach kills mold. Bleach is toxic. You don't want to be in the house spraying bleach all over to try to kill it, unless you can wear a regular, big gas mask. Have somebody do it for you. I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend that if you can clean it with vinegar or any other things that I'll share with you later that are safer, then you wait about 2 months and you retest. If it's still there or it's grown more, then you probably need to call a professional, okay? Because there are things that I'll share with you that you can do yourself. One of the things, and I don't know how you run your house, but I'm in this apartment right now. I don't have a lot of options. So there's only 2 windows that really can be opened, the sliding door to the little balcony and one other in one of the bathrooms. There's 2 bathrooms here. One of the challenges is people, especially after, how all the houses were built and all buildings that are so airtight. Remember when everybody was building airtight buildings to save on power and all that? Well, what happened was we started seeing more mold because you have no airflow. So even if you're running the fan, which I run all the time on the AC system here, even if you're running it, you're not introducing all that fresh air. So the main thing that we were taught in the Environmental Illness Society was always have at least 2 windows, maybe 3, like in your case where your house is big. It doesn't have to be more than an inch or 2, but have 3 different windows open in different parts of the house so that even if you have your fan circulating, that fresh air is being brought throughout the entire air conditioning heating system, okay? Not to have it closed up like some people do. Now in the summer, that's tough to do because you've got the AC going, but I still open it, even if it's just an inch. You've got to have airflow, and 1 window is not enough. I want to remind all of you. You have to have somewhere where it draws the air from one area to the other. That keeps a lot of the mold down. The other thing is that people use, and I steam up the bathroom because I take really hot showers. Well, that's great. But then the other thing they do, which I never thought of, to be honest, until a physician patient of mine told me, he said, and where do most people keep their supplements? He said, a lot of them keep them in the bathroom. I don't. But a lot of people keep them in the bathroom. So we said, whether it's in a drawer or in the medicine cabinet or on top of the counter, their medications, just from opening the lid and having a lot of mold in the air, a lot of humidity, you can literally open that bottle, add some toxins to that bottle for the rest of your pills without realizing it. And did you think about that? I didn't until somebody brought it to, and I said, yeah, but if they open the bottle and they take out a vitamin C or whatever, they're not open very long. He said, yeah, but all you have to do is open it once. And if you're opening it once or twice a day, and it's in the bathroom, he said, most kitchens are not moldy like that, but the bathrooms are. So that's a really good tip. Do not open your supplements or anything you're going to ingest in your bathroom. Keep them in a laundry room. I used to keep mine, I can't here, but in my hallway, I had a big linen closet and I kept them in plastic shoe boxes. So it was easy to get to wherever I was going, from the home office to the kitchen or whatever, and just pull the shoebox out, take what I need and put them back in. Do not put them in any place where there is a lot of steam. The other thing is the laundry rooms. The same thing, because you're washing with hot water. Unless you wash with cold water all the time, you're going to have that steam. So don't put anything that is ingested in your body in there, including, listen to this one, Tracy, including your vegetables. Because a lot of people have the wire baskets like I do, to put my potato. I don't have a root cellar here, but to put my potatoes and my oranges and, all that stuff in, uh, garlic, onions, that, and they have it in their laundry room. Well, what happens? You've got steam in the laundry room. Now
Ah,
you have, now you have invisible mold. You cut that onion or that orange and you don't realize, especially like with onions that are very permeable. An orange, not as bad, but an onion or garlic or any kind of a soft vegetable or fruit is really susceptible. And did you think about that? Because I didn't. I mean, these are all things that my patients share with me, which is amazing because I learn as much from them as they learn from me.
no, I
So,
don't keep food in my laundry room. Actually, that's not true. I just remembered. I bought a dehydrator in
uh-huh.
the summer. I bought a dehydrator and I put it in the laundry room because I have a lot of counter space in there, and my kitchen at the time was being cluttered because I had two extra kids here.
Right.
More.
Not
Anyway,
anymore.
but so yeah, I wouldn't even think about that. But going back to a point you said earlier when you mentioned bleach, I mean, if
Uh-huh.
you don't see where it's coming from, then how would you wouldn't even know how to treat, you know?
Great question. Get a moisture meter. If you really have a problem or you're having, thank God you don't have any of these issues, but me working with chemically sensitive people and fibromyalgia, especially, which was one of my specialties, I had them get a moisture meter. And I don't remember, I think at the time they bought it at Home Depot. I don't know where you can get them now. And you just put it, you know how you find how you use a stud finder? You ever
Oh
seen a
yeah.
contractor? Because your husband, does a lot of that type of stuff. You get a stud finder to tell you where the stud is. So if you're going to put something up that's heavy, or you're going to chop through the wall, you know where it is. Same thing with the moisture meter. It'll tell you where the moisture is when you can't see it. So
Oh,
at the time when I bought mine the last time, I believe I paid like, I don't know, $22 or something for it. Well worth it if you are diagnosed with any kind of a inflammatory disorder, including RA, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, anything like that, reoccurring sinus infections all the time. Because I'm gonna cite some studies that I was involved in, and actually one was presented in Dallas, Texas, and way back I think it was 2003. I'll look at my notes in a minute, and it was the physicians group that finally realized that most sinus conditions that ENT specialists, ear, nose, and throat doctors, were reporting when they did swabs, they realized it was mold. So these people were getting antibiotics over and over and over and really suffering because I know my youngest son had terrible sinus infections when he was, well, from the time that he was a baby to the time he was in his 20s. And they're painful. I mean, he would scream with earaches and sinus infections and headaches. Well, those things we didn't realize were also triggered in most cases environmentally. It can be triggered by candida, which you and I know is a fungus, right? It's a mold, or they're triggered by environmental mold. So think about that. Think how many people are constantly suffering with those type of symptoms with ears and nose and throat, and don't realize that they could get these little petri dishes and find out if there's mold in their house or in their office. I'll tell you a story in a minute about somebody that was actually fired from their job, but they had to give them disability. Let's do that now. One of my practitioners that is on my team, I call it my team because they're the healthcare professionals that have studied with me. She worked for a very large company for 32 years, Tracy, that had nothing to do with chemicals or, healthcare or anything. Okay. It was an advertising agency, very big one. And she got sicker and sicker and sicker. And she started seeing mold underneath the window in her office. So she reported it to her supervisor, and they looked at her like, oh, God. And this poor gal is getting more sinus infections and more body aches. She goes to the doctor. They tell her she has an autoimmune disease. They give her all kinds of things to boost her white blood cells because they were like non-existent. She goes from one symptom to another, and they looked at her like, I always say, as you laugh, I know that her elevator wasn't going to the top floor. This lady is just, um, off the whack here. And so she put up with it for a while, and finally she paid out of her own money to have somebody go test the mold. Well, sure enough, they tested it, came back Staphybotrys, which is the most toxic mold you can be exposed to. That's what we know it as, black mold. Okay, you know that term. They still wouldn't do anything, and they said that she was a complainer all the time. Okay, chronic. She was a chronic complainer that they were going to let her go. They were going to get rid of her position because they legally couldn't fire her, and she ended up getting a doctor's order, and she went on disability after a lot of problems. This gal got so sick that she contacted me because she found out through the Environmental Illness Society that I was on their team. She drove to Sandpoint, Idaho from the state where she is to consult with me, and I put her on a program. We got her well, but it took a year of her being diligent in her diet and her supplements, cleaning, getting away from that environment. And guess what? 4 years later, that building had to be burned down. It was condemned from toxic mold. What had happened was, I don't know if you remember, the drywall for a certain amount of years was made, I don't even want to mention the country, it was made out of the country. And it was all being imported to the US. And by the time it got here on those ships, it was full of mold.
Oh, wow.
And the contractors would go ahead, and I don't know if it was visible or not, I never did figure that out, but they would build buildings, and this building was built during that time. So that mold grew and grew and grew in the walls, but it hadn't shown up anywhere yet except under her window. Well, eventually, I guess everybody started getting sick. They called somebody in. Maybe this gal wasn't quite so loony, and they had to burn the building down. They built a new one about a mile away.
Wow, that's crazy.
So she went back and got more disability because she was able to prove in court that, they were, that was not acceptable. I mean, they wouldn't believe her. They did away with her position. And yes, she got well, but it was a lot of money, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering over somebody not believing her when the black mold was there. She had all the pictures. I showed them at one of the medical conferences. So it's something that we can't take lightly. Staphybotrys mold kills. And the one thing I think I mentioned in one of our programs or on one of our chats, that if a person passes away from toxic mold, it turns into the body into sepsis. You've heard that. Mm-hmm. Sepsis is an overall condition where the body is loaded with fungus. And it's just on the death certificate, just says sepsis. Mm. Well, it's really mold. And so hers would have been, that diagnosis had something happened to her at that point. Thank God she got away from that environment, did everything I asked her to do, guided her through all her diet changes, and she recovered. And today she's fine. But it was a long struggle. And like I said, because insurance didn't cover supplements and naturopaths and, anything to do with natural medicine, this was all out of her pocket. She literally sold her little house that was paid for to get the money to get well, which is sad. Okay. So I don't want anybody to take it lightly. And also don't discard the idea that your symptoms could be mold related because, like Tracy, didn't smell it and didn't see it. If you have some kind of what we call invisible illnesses, and I wrote a book called Invisible Illnesses years ago. It's not in print now. I wrote it because people were getting all of these diagnoses and ruining their lives. And nobody had a clue that mold was at the basis of what they were suffering from. A lot of them had moved into a new home, didn't know the drywall was bad, or they move into an older home like I love to do because I've remodeled several historical homes, but you always have problems. All you have to do is watch HGTV and you know that they uncover something and there's 200 problems. And then that's where the mold is, or that's where the old rotten wood that starts getting moldy is, and people don't understand it. So they may buy a beautiful historic home that has been, quote, updated by a contractor, but they don't know what's underneath. So we have to understand that even changes emotionally, Tracy, depression, a lot of bipolar type symptoms. I'm not diagnosing, I'm not saying it's bipolar, but bipolar type symptoms can be attributed to toxic mold, headaches. I've got a list here of things that the memory problems. People start with memory problems, and it's like, oh, well, I'm just getting older. Look and see where you're living. Is there mold?
Yeah.
See what I mean about why it's hard to diagnose? And medical doctors are not experts at that. They don't go to the conferences unless they are in uh, as a society of integrative medical doctors. That's who the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, which I was a part of, are all MDs except just a few naturopaths and toxicologists, because they're the ones that understand that environmental factors have a lot to do with the illnesses that are being diagnosed.
Okay.
So, okay, would you show that one more time? Are you going to put the link so that our members can see the
Show the
test
box.
kit? Yeah. And what did it cost you, hun?
Oh goodness, I don't know, like
And you
maybe
know,
30 or $40.
okay, see, it's very, very well worth it. And they're plastic petri dishes like you would see in a laboratory. And don't you have the option on that one to DIY it, and you see the specs and you compare it to what's on their website? Or can't you send it into a lab?
Yes, and
Do
it's
they?
$35 a petri dish if you send it into their lab. But when I went on their website, this was after we spoke, to look at this, they said if there's
Mhm.
more than 4, then that's a matter of concern. But if it's less than 4, then they don't worry about it. You know
I
me,
disagree. I
I
know,
worry
and I
about
know
it.
you. I know. So I think that the petri dish that you saw in your master bathroom, isn't that where there was more?
There was 3. Yeah.
Yeah. If it were my house, I would be sending that to the lab.
Okay. Well, I'll send it to the
Okay.
lab then.
Yeah, just the one. I mean, you don't need to do it for all 4 or 5, but at least one so that you know, and you're. I mean, that's where you sleep. That's where we spend so many hours. We have to be able to, and it's adjoining, right? It's an ensuite. Your
Yeah.
bathroom is adjoining your master bedroom. Yeah, you can't take the risk. If it's that many, then go ahead and send it in. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So let me. Here's what I want. I want to find the one that I had about Dallas because it's really important. Um, Oh, I want to give another case history because I think this is when people realize how serious it can be. Do you remember Ed McMahon on the TV
Yeah.
shows?
Tonight Show.
Okay, yes. Ed McMahon and his wife built a beautiful house in Southern California on the coast. Okay, and they ended up burning it down. It was all over the newspapers in California. I don't know if it was everywhere, but it was north of Los Angeles on the coast. And I was asked to go as one of the inspectors. That's why I know about it. And Ed and his wife got sicker and sicker and sicker after that new house was built. And they couldn't figure out what was going on. And they had one of the houses that was basically the springboard for the class action suit against the drywall people, the drywall company that had the moldy drywall. They won the suit. So they had to burn Ed McMahon's house down and completely rebuild it, because if they didn't burn it to the ground, you wouldn't kill all the mold. You don't know if you just took some of the walls out that it wouldn't still be spores that would continue to grow. So I was on that site. It was really fun because one of my favorite people, Dick Clark, who had the dance show on TV for years when I was younger, lived right down the street from Ed, and they were good friends. So I got to see him and shake his hand, but that's about it. But it was a really cool moment because it was a beautiful community of a lot of Hollywood people. But Ed and his wife were so sick that they ended up in emergency. I forget how many times, until somebody said, "You need to call somebody in," and that's how they found out that it was the toxic mold in the drywall. And here we had a beautiful, gorgeous new home. Didn't matter. The drywall had mold in it. So it's not about something that Dr. Gloria came up with or that we heard at a medical conference and nobody has any validation. It's the complete opposite. And I have stories that go on and on, but I want to give you let me go back to my slide here so I can remember. There's so much to remember that I don't even try anymore. It was 2003, and it was the Environmental Illness Conference in Dallas, Texas, and that's when they found out that, now mind you, 2003, that they found out that most of the sinus infectious with the eye, nose, and throat specialists that were there, and all the testing they had done was from environmental mold. Okay, of course they weren't testing for candida. Take that into consideration. But then in 2022, the same tests were done, and it was they found between 100,000 and 400,000 types of new fungi that didn't exist in 2003.
Wow.
Is that not scary? So when people say, "Oh, I don't think there's mold. I don't want to spend $40 or so to have the mold place tested." Oh, yes, you do, because it's ruining your health and it's so simple to test. I mean, was it hard? You undo the little tape on the petri dishes and you put it on a counter. I mean, it's not difficult. You don't have to be a scientist or a PhD to be able to do it. But they found more than 200 mycotoxins. And the difference is that a mycotoxin affects the brain. This is why I believe a lot of the patients that I had worked with had a lot of children with ADD, ADHD, because they were living in toxic environments until they finally tested and found out what it was. So can you imagine, a mycotoxin is like a neurotoxin, much like some of the foods that we eat that you and I are aware of that actually kill brain cells. Well, that's the same thing that happens. It invades the entire body. And it's not something that we can say, "Oh no, this is just, I fixed that part. I had a little mold in my shower and I fixed it." I bought a house one time that I was remodeling and I was going to live in after it was remodeled for a while till my custom home was built. And there was mold. It wasn't black, but there was a lot of mold in the corner in the shower, in the corners where the tile met. It was all tiled to the ceiling. And I said to the contractor, "I'm not moving in. Knock those walls out." "Well, Gloria, we can just spray it with some anti-mold or something." I said, "No, you're knocking both those walls out, and then I'll move in until." And he took them out, and there was mold all over the wall behind the shower, even though you only saw two little corners where the shower tile met. So it's really it's an invisible invader that sabotages our health, and we don't know it. And that's the scary part. That's why I think it's important. And I believe that with Cynthia having the experience of knowing someone with this, it's important that we all know we can test for it. We don't have to just keep taking prescriptions for symptoms.
So in my kids and my husband's karate studio, one of the first things they learn a lesson is find it and fix it. So we have two issues. What do we do when we test for it and it tests positive? How do we fix that? And then if somebody's sick, how do they get it out of their body?
That's a really good question. If it's severe, like the gal I was talking to you about that came to see me after the toxic mold where she worked, she had to have IVs because they had to clean her blood out. I mean, she had to get things that were in her system immediately. She was so sick. But the other thing too is the diet has to change right away, because it's the same thing that you and I have talked about on several shows, that if you don't get rid of the simple carbs that convert to sugar, you're never going to get rid of the fungus. So here you are, if you're exposed, or even if you've gotten rid of the actual problem, and then you continue to eat, you still have it in your system. But when you start detoxing by those spores in your body, that fungus will start dying because you're not feeding it. Okay, so there's several things to do. You can do colon hydrotherapy to help it, which I had this gal do as well, to help it get out of your system faster. That has to be done by a professional. I really don't believe that doing enemas at home would do it. Yes, it'll help, but it's not going to get it out in the amount of sludge that we need, because one professional colon therapy can be worth up to 40 bowel movements. So you don't,
Wow.
doing an enema is not easy to do on yourself. I've tried it. But besides that, it's just not getting the water in there the way it needs. Okay. The other thing is we've talked about caprylic acid when we did the show on
Candida.
candida. Caprylic acid you do not have to be afraid of. This is not prescribing. It's telling you what I know works. Caprylic acid is made from the inside shell of the coconut. It's a food. So it's like telling you eat more carrots. You need them for your eyes. Caprylic acid is safe. I don't know of anybody that's ever had a contraindication except the people that are real toxic with their dietary habits, the sugars and the carbs, and that are exposed to toxic mold can have a Herxheimer reaction. If you kill that fungus too quick, think about it this way. And I'm going to use an example, and it's not a fun one, but it really gets the point. I use this when I'm teaching. Think of a caterpillar, Tracy, or a little snail going across your sidewalk. So that little caterpillar or snail represents, in this example, the organism of the candida, okay, of the fungus. So it's always letting out some off spray. It's always letting out some of its byproducts, right? We can call it its poop because that's what it is. It's always letting a little bit. You see that snail go across and it leaves that little slimy trail, right?
Right.
Okay, that's what the fungus does in candida in your body. So it's always there, but it's not so huge until it becomes so overwhelming that you really feel sick, like a Herxheimer reaction. Now, think of that same snail or caterpillar and you step on it. Now you've got a massive amount of junk that's inside. That's what happens when you kill a fungus too quick. I've seen it in a microscope. So all of a sudden, you're dumping toxins into the liver faster than the liver's ability to neutralize it. Makes sense, doesn't it? And
yeah.
that's when you get the Herxheimer. Yeah, that's when you get the Herxheimer.
So that's why you say
you
to take 1 a day of the caprylic acid.
Yeah, but sometimes you don't even take one. You open it, and I have people take a third of a capsule if they've been exposed or they've taken a lot of antibiotics, and put it, doesn't have any flavor, put it in a little water and make 1 capsule last 3 days. You cannot go quick. If you know you've done the saliva test that we've taught everybody how to do, and we've given a handout, if you've done that and you have a lot of candida fungus, remember, candida is a fungus and so is environmental mold. And so if you have a lot of it, don't necessarily start with 1. Hey, you've already got it. Let's go slow. Let's not make you sick. Because then people get scared. Oh, I took the caprylic and I was so sick and I had a headache and, I had a sore throat. And there's no reason to do that to your body. It's not, no pain, no gain. It's be respectful of your organs that you're forcing to deal with complexes that they're not used to. Okay, they're not meant to deal with a ton of byproducts from that little snail or the caterpillar. I know that leaves an impression, and people, 20 years later would see me and go, I remember that example. I had little stuffed toys, by the way, that an Amish woman made for me that was a patient. And when I did that and I was lecturing, little things came out and felt, so that people would remember the example. I mean, that's how detailed I got, but people got it. And so go slow. If you do have a lot of candida or you have a lot of mold in your environment, then go ahead and start with a third of a capsule, maybe. Be the judge. A half a capsule then, if you don't have any problems. Do it for 3 to 4 days at a time, maybe a week at a time. If you have a lot of candida, a week at a time of doing just a third of a capsule. Then you go up to a half a capsule. When I was so sick, I didn't even do a third, Tracy. I would open the capsule and put it in a little dish like we use, to measure our spices, when you're prepping. And I would take my fingers and go like this barely and put it in a glass of water. Because if I did more than that, my throat would close. I'd go into anaphylactic reaction.
Wow.
That's how bad it can get. That's why I'm adamant about people not deciding that, oh, I don't feel real bad. Boom, I'm going to take the whole thing. Then if it continues and you're able to, and you're not also being bombarded with your food because of a diet that is feeding the fungus, or environmentally, then you can go ahead and take one in the morning and one at night, which is what I finally did. And after about 3 months, my saliva was completely clear. And now I take a break. I'll take one a day for, usually about a month. And then I take a break and then I take another. But I saliva test every Sunday morning. I've done it for years. That way you remember to do it. Are you still doing your saliva test?
Oh goodness, I haven't done it
This
for a
is confession.
while.
This is confession time.
I haven't done it for a while.
Okay, so
I forgot, but I am taking my caprylic acid. I just take one at night before bed. So should I up it to 2?
no, take your no. That's a really good example of what people do. Should I up it to 2? I haven't had any side effects. No, do your test.
Okay, I'll
If you've
test
been taking
tomorrow.
it this long and there's no candida showing, stop it for a while and
Okay,
then go back on as a maintenance. Okay. If you have
all
a
right.
lot of candida and you haven't had symptoms, then go ahead and take one at night and one in the morning, for instance.
Okay.
Okay, for about a month, and then test again.
We need
You're
to do a
laughing because you know
show.
you should have.
We need to do a show where we cover the 3 different tests that people can do.
Okay.
Those 3 tests. We really should do that.
This we should. It's the saliva, the patch test on your skin to see how your thyroid is functioning, and the pH strip for your urine. Those 3 are real. We can do that. We should do that. That's a good
Do a
suggestion.
show about
Thank
that.
you. Yeah, we
And
need to.
okay, so what they could do is first you said avoid the sugar and the simple carbs that feed the candida, do the caprylic acid,
Right.
and
And stay alkaline. Stay alkaline. Because if your urine pH is in the 6s or less, you are feeding the candida. You're allowing it to go, whoopee, this is the great environment for me to multiply and to thrive. At 7.5, remember, not even cancer cells can survive. The doctor won the Nobel Prize for that in the 1930s. So our goal is always with counseling people, not diagnosing or prescribing, but counseling them on their dietary changes and on their urine, and why it's so important to stay pH alkaline is that we want 7.5 average. Don't test it every day, because if you eat something that is going to cause a little bit of acidity, you're going to panic. Oh my God, I'm really acidic. No, test it once a week at the same time. That's why I do mine Sunday mornings. It's the only morning I'm not rushing to get on the computer and do other things. Even though I'm on the computer, I don't rush to do it in the morning. So if you can average out 7.5 within that month, you're okay. If 1 week it's 7.6 and it's 6.5 or whatever, you're okay. But you want to average at 7.5. Okay. So that's the third thing to do.
okay, so the test strips that I purchased, it says to do your second morning urine, not the first.
No, do the first.
Okay.
Do the first.
Then what do they do about killing, besides opening the windows, what do they do to kill it? Like, so for instance, my master bathroom, which is right here,
Yeah.
what do I do if I can't
Dehumidifier.
see it? It's probably coming from the shower, I'm guessing.
Probably dehumidifier. They're not expensive. When you identify that there's mold in an area, you can buy a dehumidifier, not the ones for the whole house. Those can be hundreds of dollars. I had one that was small, that was only in the area where I was having a problem when I restored a Victorian that was 120 years old. I had some mold in just one area, and it wasn't my bedroom, but I put it in there because it was my study and my den. And so I put it in there, and when I did the mold test again, everything was gone. And we just wiped it with vinegar on a spray bottle, and it got rid of it because it wasn't bad enough. So if you can identify where, now start playing detective, Tracy. Go into your shower, get your head underneath that sink, and see if you can see anything where water has dripped, or where maybe something overflowed in the sink and you had a little bit of moisture. You can tell. There's either stains on the cabinet or on the wall, or you can actually put your hand up in there and see if it's moist. Okay.
Okay.
And then just spray with a lot of, don't dilute it, just vinegar. white distilled vinegar. Okay. And if it's mild, that should get rid of it, as long as you keep the area dehydrated. If you keep it, where you don't have a lot of steam, and in the bathroom, that's hard to do because you do
So,
have a lot of moisture.
so remember on our admin call when Jenna was talking about the ozonator, the ozone thing? What about that?
Okay. Great memory. Ozone is amazing, but you cannot be in the room where the
Right.
ozone has been. It'll cause the mucous membranes, the lungs, and the sinuses to dry out, and you'll end up with pneumonia or a sinus infection. Okay, it's that serious. When we've had problems with mold, and I used ozonators because I did when I had my clinics, I had two of them I would loan patients. I wouldn't sell it to them, I'd loan it to them because most of them really didn't have the money to do that. And you have to put it in the area and get out for 3 or 4 days. So they would go stay with relatives or with their grown kids or whatever, leave it on high for 3 or 4 days, then have somebody go in, not the person that has symptoms. If somebody's sick, okay, have somebody else go in with a mask, turn the ozonator off, and open all the windows. That way you've got fresh air, fresh oxygen, because you don't want to breathe that ozone. So Jana was absolutely right. I mean, it kills it, but you've got to, I don't know if it'll kill Staphylococcus, depending on how strong it is, how strong the mold is. But it does kill surface mold, but you cannot breathe it. So you have to, you can put it on and then run out. You don't have to mask up, just turn it on, but you don't want to sit there and breathe it and there was a lot of machines years ago that people were selling, home machines, that would be ozone. They all ended up with pneumonia or bronchitis, every one of them. I think there was a lawsuit over it. So
Okay.
yeah, you can't use that and be in it. That's the fourth thing that they can do. Okay. And you could do that, but that would be hard because you're in that room a lot. That's part of your office as well. So I wouldn't do that in your case. Find out first, play detective. We can talk about it on a show so that we can help people through our experiences, and do some detective work first, do some more testing, and then let's see if we need to do that. And then we
Okay.
can figure out what to do. Okay? Good excuse to go on a staycation somewhere
Yeah,
close
the
by if you
problem
have to
is
leave.
my dog. Like, what do I do with my dog? That's the whole thing with me right now because he's old and,
Yeah.
it's like, I don't
That's
know.
why I don't have pets. Not that I don't love them, but I don't want to. I don't want that responsibility. I want to be able to just pack up and leave if I have to.
Yeah, I like
So,
that
but when they're
idea.
old, it's hard. When they're old, it's hard. You've got to treat them like you would a person. I mean, they need that compassion at that stage.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have four things. Did we miss anything there? I have one more thing. When you start having congestion and you're not sure what it is, use the coconut oil. And I know I should be talking to Dollar Tree because I love their coconut oil, and Tracy bought it. Get the little jars of purified coconut oil at Dollar Tree. They're $1.25. Use a Q-tip and put it up in your nose, especially if you're going to go into a moldy environment. For instance, let's say you're going to your mother-in-law's house and she doesn't want to hear this, but there's mold in there. You can smell it, even if you can't see it. Swab your nose with coconut oil. Why? Because coconut oil is antibacterial, antiviral, and anti-inflammatory. Then when you come out, use just a saline spray if you want and flush your nose out. So the coconut oil becomes the barrier between your mucous membranes so that mold doesn't get in there. I thought that was brilliant. And that wasn't my idea. It was a patient who's a pharmacist of mine. Said, well, you can just flush it out with saline later, and then you get all that stuff that was accumulated in the coconut oil. So that's a good way to do it. Okay, there's another trick to do that. The other thing
Okay,
is
let
to
me ask you a
remember.
question about that though. If you
Yep,
put
yep,
coconut oil in your nose and it collects, say, because I know that coconut oil is antifungal. So if you collect
right.
this fungus or whatever in your nose and then you rinse it in saline, isn't it coming back through and going down your throat? So,
No, not necessarily. No,
so it
because if
kills
you
it
blow your
first.
nose first, yeah, it kills it first, and then you blow your nose, and then you use the saline.
Okay.
If you
All right.
have some
Cool.
of the prescription strength natural antibiotic that we use, I don't want to mention names, then that would work. That's what I do. If not, just saline works fine.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we close?
Just a couple of things. Remember that when you travel, we have no choice. I know I had to live in a hotel for a while when we first came back from Ecuador. And I had no choice. And I could smell mold going down the hallways, and none of the windows in the hotel opened. So in that case, I bought from Amazon. It's right. I even have one here in my office. It's about this big. It's, I don't know, it's maybe 8 inches by 12 inches or 14 inches tall. I bought a little HEPA filter that has filters you can take out and rinse, or you can replace them when they get to where you can't rinse them. And I bought it on Amazon. They're not expensive. I have 4 of them. And so I have one in the other bedroom where my business partner is, and I have one here, and one in the kitchen, and one that I'm not using right now. But it filters, a HEPA filter is very different than a normal air purifier. You don't want the ozone. You want the HEPA filter, which is what we use in hospitals in clean rooms to clean everything. These little things that are that small will completely clean the air in a room, not a huge room, but your bedroom, or unless your bedroom's humongous, or in this room, it's probably 9 by 11 or so. In 1 hour, it'll completely clean the air 4 times. So then you're purifying the air, not spending a lot of money for a whole house filter, and you can buy them on Amazon. And if you want me to look for the link, I can send it to you, and you can post it for our members, because I have 4 of them. They're great, and most of my patients have them that want to clean. Even during allergy season, when the pollen is real high, they're amazing. Especially if you have children or pets that I have people that their pets have horrible allergies. They sneeze and they itch and everything during allergy season, and this avoids that if you put it in the room where they spend most of the time.
So the HEPA filter cleans the air. Does the ozonator
Completely.
actually find the mold and kill the mold? Because we don't want it to keep
Yes.
growing.
Right. We don't want it to continue to grow. It basically dehydrates it. Think about that. It sucks it sucks the energy, it sucks the life right out of it. Okay. So when you put an ozonator in and you're breathing it, it's drying out your lungs, and it's drying out your sinuses and your eyes, and you end up with an infection. That's why a lot of people that live in the desert have a lot of sinus infections and lung infections, and they don't realize that dry air is drying the mucous membranes out, and they're not lubricating them. So the same thing with the ozone. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a
Yeah,
lot of sense.
it's the ozone that. Yeah, but the little HEPA filters are great, and they're not expensive. I'll find you the link so you can post it, and so that our members can, And I have nothing to do with the companies. They don't know who I am, other than I buy a lot from them, but they don't have a clue who I am. So we're not doing it for any other reason other than Cynthia and Tracy and I have a commitment to give you as much education as we can. And Tracy's been gracious enough to do an extra show here and there so that we can really give you whatever information we can share so that you can improve your life and that of your family. I think that's the most important. We have that commitment. It doesn't do any good to go through all of these wonderful devices that Dr. A has made available to us, or later on into the maximum bed that we're waiting for. If you go back into a toxic environment, or you don't understand what you're eating that could be adding to your disorder or your discomfort. So this is why we're doing the education that we've committed to do, so that we help you now to live healthier and help you afterwards, so that all that benefit stays with you and you don't go back to toxic environments or toxic foods or anything else that could be deteriorating your health. One other thing I want to mention, that steroids and antibiotics actually worsen the fungal related infections. Remember that. They worsen them. They destroy the body's natural biological terrain. You were talking about intestinal terrain, and terrain is everything. So I made a note to mention that, since you talked about it with me this morning. It destroys that intestinal terrain. So they have a field day. I mean, the fungus just goes crazy. So antibiotics and steroids and one other thing that really feeds fungus is birth control pills. Um, in your body when it's already there, it feeds them. And then if you have a moldy environment, you've got a double whammy. Okay, so those are the things that we know for sure feed, besides your dietary carbohydrates and sugars, is the antibiotics, the birth control pills, and the steroids.
Okay.
Okay, so there's three takeaways right there. Not that you shouldn't take the antibiotics or the steroids on your doctor's recommendation if you need them, but you need to understand the repercussions, and you need to understand you've got to replace all the good bacteria back into your intestinal terrain in order to be able to maximize your health and your immunity again.
Yep, and we did a full
Okay.
show about that. So there's lots of references here, you guys, to shows that we've done. So can I encourage you that if you missed a WoW talk, to please go out and watch the replay. We now have a WoW
Mm-hmm.
page on our on the Quantum Healing Systems website. It's just quantumhealingsystems.org/WoW. And of course, you have to be logged in, but that will give you the link to all the replays because they're unlisted videos. So they're not marked for public view because we see your cute little faces. And so we don't want, the
Right.
public to see that. So they're all unlisted, but you can access the entire playlist and see all the show replays on the website that we have or on the web page. So awesome.
Yeah, and that's great. And Tracy, how many have you done? You said the other day how many you've done total. Was it 20? How
There
many
was,
WoW shows have we done?
well, not including the special wows, but just the weekly wow.
Right.
Last week was 21.
Yeah, there's a lot. And so, any of you that are not listening, take Tracy's advice. Go back and watch them. It can be, just, I mean, they're only half an hour to an hour. Very seldom are they a full hour. And so, we've got great guests on there, and Tracy does some fabulous interviewing. So please don't sit back and say, oh, well, I haven't got time for that. This is part of your responsibility to educate yourself and take what we're sharing with you to task. It's not about just hearing it and ignoring it, or not even hearing it at all, because people are asking questions that we've answered, haven't we, over and over in the shows, and it's obvious that they're not watching it or listening to the replays. So please
Well,
do that
and
and
you
take it to heart.
you're such a wealth of information, and our guests are also the same, and there's always a lesson on every single show. And also, you guys, this is a benefit for membership. Key, Vibe Tribe, wow. These are, and
Absolutely.
everything is here as a gift for you, for a member, so that you can be healthier and, live a long life with health and happiness. So anyway, okay, well,
Yeah,
we just thank you, Dr. Gloria, for sharing your wisdom once again. I
you're
so
so
appreciate
welcome.
you and your friendship and your knowledge and just everything. So,
Thank you, dear heart. And I appreciate all you do for us and for the membership. So thank you.
okay, everyone.
God bless. And I'll see. Okay, take care. Bye bye.
Okay, thank you, everyone.